Wild West Legends, the true stories behind famous cowboys. The Wild West. A time when cowboys roamed the plains, gunslingers faced off in dusty saloons, and lawmen walked the fine line between justice and chaos. But were these legendary figures truly larger than life, or were they just a product of their time, and maybe a little creative storytelling? Today, we're saddling up to ride through the true stories of some of the most iconic Wild West figures: Wyatt Earp, Billy the Kid, Wild Bill Hickok, and more. Spoiler alert, it wasn't all high noon duels and riding off into the sunset. Let's start with the man who was as much myth as he was law. Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp, lawman or lawless? Wyatt Earp. The name alone conjures up images of a stoic lawman standing tall, ready to draw down any outlaw dumb enough to cross him. But hold your horses, Earp's story is a lot more complicated than Hollywood would have you believe. Born in 1848, Earp wasn't always the sheriff in the white hat kind of guy. In fact, he was a bit of a wild card. In his early years, Wyatt tried his hand at a variety of occupations. Let's see, he was a farmer, a freight hauler, a stagecoach driver, and, oh yes, a buffalo hunter. Because, apparently, there was a lot of money in shooting large, hairy animals back then. But, like many Wild West figures, Wyatt found his true calling as a lawman, well, sort of. Sure, he wore the badge, but Wyatt's sense of justice was, shall we say, flexible. He wasn't above bending the rules, especially when it came to gambling, drinking, and the occasional fistfight. He even got arrested for horse theft once, ironic, right? Of course, we can't talk about Earp without mentioning the OK Corral. In 1881, in Tombstone, Arizona, Wyatt, along with his brothers and his pal Doc Holliday, faced off against the Clanton McGlory gang in what's probably the most famous 30-second gunfight in history. Spoiler, Wyatt survived without a scratch. Mythical? Maybe. Lucky? Definitely. But here's the kicker, after the OK Corral, Earp didn't just ride off into the sunset as a hero. He spent the rest of his life chasing money and adventure, dabbling in saloons, real estate, and, oddly enough, mining. Wyatt Earp, the real man, was as much a hustler as he was a lawman. Hollywood, take notes. Billy the Kid, the teenage outlaw. Now, if you think Wyatt Earp was complicated, wait until we get to Billy the Kid. If ever there was a Wild West legend whose reputation grew faster than his actual age, it's Billy. Born Henry McCarty around 1859, Billy wasn't even 20 years old when he gained his reputation as one of the most notorious outlaws of the West. I mean, come on, the guy was basically a teenager, and he already had an impressive resume of cattle rustling, horse thievery, and, oh yeah, murder. He reportedly killed 8 men before his 21st birthday, which makes your average teenage rebellion look like child's play. But here's the thing, Billy wasn't just some cold-blooded killer. His life was a whirlwind of bad luck, bad decisions, and an uncanny ability to escape from jail. The kid's most famous escape was from a New Mexico courthouse, where, after being sentenced to hang, he slipped out of his handcuffs, grabbed a guard's gun, and shot his way to freedom. And I can't even find my car keys most days. Unfortunately for Billy, his luck ran out in 1881 when he was gunned down by Sheriff Pat Garrett. Legend has it, Billy walked into a dark room, asked, "Quien es?" "Who's there?" and Garrett shot him dead. Yikes. But here's where the legend takes off. Over the years, people began claiming that Billy didn't die that night, that he escaped once again and lived out his days peacefully under a new name. And honestly, considering his track record of escapes, who's to say he didn't? Wild Bill Hickok, gambler, gunfighter, legend. Now, let's talk about a man whose name sounds like a brand of whiskey, Wild Bill Hickok. With his long flowing hair, fancy mustache, and quick-draw gunfighting skills, Wild Bill was basically the rock star of the Wild West. Born James Butler Hickok in 1837, Wild Bill's life was a whirlwind of excitement. He started out as a stagecoach driver and a Union scout during the Civil War, but it wasn't until he found himself in the gambling dens of the frontier that his legend truly began. You see, Hickok wasn't just any gambler. He was the kind who could stare you down with those icy blue eyes, call your bluff, and maybe shoot you dead if you tried to cheat him. It was in Springfield, Missouri, in 1865, where Wild Bill made his name by winning one of the first recorded quick-draw duels in the West, killing a man named Davis Tutt over a gambling debt. A gunfight over poker, Wild Bill was basically the original high-stakes player. But, like any good Western legend, Hickok's story doesn't end on a high note. In 1876, while playing poker in Deadwood, South Dakota, Hickok was shot in the back of the head by a man named Jack McCall. Bill's hand at the time? Aces and eights, forever known as the dead man's hand. Talk about going out in a blaze of glory. Well, more like a sneak attack, but still, Hickok's legend as the sharpshooting, poker-playing icon of the West lives on. Jesse James, Robin Hood or Ruthless Killer. Now, Jesse James, this guy has one heck of a reputation. Some folks think of him as the Robin Hood of the Wild West, robbing trains and banks while sticking it to the big corporations. But was he really the hero the legends make him out to be? Born in 1847 in Missouri, Jesse James was a Confederate guerrilla fighter during the Civil War, and let's just say, he didn't exactly lay down his guns when the war ended. Alongside his brother Frank, Jesse went on to form the infamous James Younger Gang. These guys were responsible for some of the most daring bank and train robberies of the era, often leaving a trail of bodies behind them. But here's the twist: while some saw Jesse as a folk hero standing up to the corrupt railroad companies and big banks, the truth is a bit less glamorous. The James Gang's robberies weren't just about the money, they were fueled by Jesse's bitterness over the South's defeat in the Civil War. And if you were in the way, well, let's just say he didn't mind pulling the trigger. Jesse James' reign of terror ended in 1882 when he was shot in the back by a member of his own gang, Robert Ford, who was looking to collect the reward on James' head. Moral of the story: keep your friends close, and you're back even closer to the wall. Calamity Jane, the untamed heroine. And it wouldn't be a proper Wild West roundup without a mention of one of its most colorful and controversial characters, Calamity Jane. Born Martha Jane Canary in 1852, Calamity Jane didn't just break the mold for women in the West, she shattered it and stomped on the pieces. Known for her rugged lifestyle, sharp tongue, and love of adventure, she was a woman who refused to be confined by the expectations of her time. Calamity Jane wasn't just a wild storyteller, she had real accomplishments to back up her tall tales. She was a skilled sharpshooter and a frontierswoman who could hold her own among the toughest cowboys. One of her most famous claims was serving as a scout for General George Custer in 1870, though historians debate the accuracy of that story. What isn't up for debate is her reputation as a scout and guide in the military, especially in the Black Hills of South Dakota, where she earned her nickname, Calamity Jane. According to legend, she was given the name after saving a captain's life during an Indian attack, though, as with many stories from the Wild West, the line between truth and fiction is blurry at best. But Calamity Jane wasn't just known for her skill with a rifle. She was also famed for her kindness and generosity, especially during times of crisis. During a smallpox outbreak in Deadwood, South Dakota, Jane is said to have tirelessly nursed the sick, even as others fled in fear. This act of compassion earned her the respect of many frontier townsfolk, and it's a testament to the complexity of her character, equal parts brawler and caregiver. And then there was her connection to the legendary Wild Bill Hickok. Jane claimed they were lovers, though it's unclear whether this was true or just part of her larger-than-life persona. What is true, however, is that she held Hickok in high regard, even in death. When she passed away in 1903, she requested to be buried next to him in Deadwood, cementing her place in the annals of Wild West legend. So there you have it: Wyatt Earp, Billy the Kid, Wild Bill Hickok, Jesse James, and Calamity Jane. Legends of the Wild West, larger than life, but in the end, just as human as the rest of us. The truth? They were complicated, messy, and sometimes downright villainous. But that's what makes them so fascinating. The Wild West may be long gone, but the stories of these legendary figures continue to gallop through history, full of grit, guts, and a whole lot of gunpowder. Until next time, saddle up and stay out of trouble. Or don't, after all, that's how legends are made.